How do you get a message out there without sounding like a crazy nut job that there was an actual Nazi who was applauded with a standing ovation in the House of Commons in Canada, in our Parliament building, by our Prime Minister and all federally elected members of Parliament, including President Vladimir Zelensky, who's visiting from Ukraine, or was visiting at the time, of a Nazi? Like, how do you get that message out there that Canadian politicians have just openly supported and given a standing ovation to a Nazi, someone who fought with the Nazis? How do you say that without sounding like a crazy nut job? I don't know. I don't know how to say it without sounding like a nut job, because I feel like a nut job. I feel like a crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist when I make videos like this, but I'm looking at the facts. I followed the breadcrumb trail. You don't even have to do a deep dive. Everybody's talking about this, and there's a real factual breakdown of this person who has ties to Nazis. This is insane. Canada supports, or they sympathize for terrorists. Justin Trudeau does, not Canadians, but Justin Trudeau sympathizes with terrorists and now supports Nazis. What the hell is happening? Am I the only one that's going crazy? Because I think I'm beyond that mentally. I feel like I've passed the crazy line, and I'm in like a deep swamp at the edge of the metaverse, because I can't believe this shit is real. Welcome back to another video, everybody. You're going to want to share this to everybody. You're going to want to share this on Facebook groups, WhatsApp, Telegram, because this is insane. And it's really hard to believe, but you see it with your own eyes, and then you have to believe it. So let's get into it. But first, a word from today's sponsor. I want to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We've teamed up together, and PIA is willing to offer my audience 83% off by using code SUNSHINE. Now, here in Canada, with Justin Trudeau in power, not only is he kind of like a communist dictator, but he's also censoring the internet, which is why you need a VPN to encrypt yourself and be able to bounce around different geolocations to really mask your not only digital footprint, but to mask your identity, because right now it's hard enough as it is to even get the news. That's right. Bill C-18 prevents users, everyday people such as yourself, myself, from accessing simple information that is our freedom of rights to information here in Canada. If you go on Facebook, you currently can't even see Canadian news. It's wild, and who knows what's next. Maybe he's going to ban everything with Google, maybe here on YouTube. So you need to cover yourself and protect yourself with a VPN such as Private Internet Access. And what better way to do that here in Canada than having 83% off? The link for that is down in the description below, as well as the pinned comment. Use code SUNSHINE with Private Internet Access for 83% off. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring today's video. So here's the clip that everyone's talking about. This is shared by the Hodge twins, which are a huge brand or channel or people in America, depending on how you want to look at it, brand or people. I like the Hodge twins. Yeah. Mainstream media is praising legit Nazis that fought for Hitler. Listen to what they call a guy. 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
Zelensky's speech received at least a dozen standing ovations. There was also one for this man, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
He fought with the Nazis. And you have a very good breakdown here by Ezra Levant on Twitter saying, I hope I'm wrong, but I think Trudeau and Zelensky just did something terrible. Let me explain it in reverse. In 2020, Canada's leading military affairs reporter wrote an article in a military journal about how Canada brought in 2,000 Nazis after the Second World War. The Nazis were in Hitler's 14th Waffen-SS division. According to military historian journalist David, they were able to sneak into Canada by changing their name and hiding their past. Here's what David wrote in the military journal. Esprit de Corps. In an attempt to hide the SS connection, the unit had changed its name in the last few days of the war to the 1st Division Ukrainian National Army, which is what this 98-year-old guy was in. So he fought with the Nazis. That was nearly 80 years ago, so most of those Nazis have since died. But one of them is apparently still alive. Yaroslav Yunka. And if I'm reading the news correctly, Trudeau invited him as an honored guest today to Zelensky's visit to Canadian Parliament. And that's who this guy is. This is Yaroslav Zelensky. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to give it my best shot. It says, Ukrainian President Zelensky and Prime Minister Trudeau recognize Yaroslav Yunka, who was in attendance and fought with the 1st Ukrainian Division in the Second World War before later immigrating to Canada in the House of Commons on Friday. And he was introduced by the House Speaker as 98-year-old soldier who fought against the Russians, a hero.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
So everybody in the House of Commons is clapping for somebody who fought with the Nazis. But because he was fighting for Ukraine's independence with the Nazis, it's okay because we're bowing down to anyone that is defending Ukraine or has fought previously for Ukraine.
His name is Yaroslav Hunka.
I prefer my pronunciation.
I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that. But I'm very proud to say that he is from North Bay and from my riding of Nipissing to Miskaming.
So Justin Trudeau is okay with calling trucker convoy protesters a bunch of Nazis and racists and misogynists or whatever. But then they actually invite a Nazi or someone who fought with the Nazis into Parliament and give them a standing ovation, and that's okay. Like, actual Nazis are okay, but Canadians who stand up against the government in a peaceful protest and with their democratic right to peacefully protest and freedom of assembly, and they're Nazis. This is bizarro world. And I feel like I've jumped off the deep end and I've gone into the deepest, darkest corners of 4chan and Reddit with this, but it's here on Twitter in front of me from credible people. And everyone's talking about it, which is why it's getting 5.4 million views on this account, 500,000 views on that account. The Hodge twins, another 100,000, and Ezra Levant's Twitter thread with 1.7 million views. You can't hide this. It's being hidden in plain sight. And it doesn't end there, because when you look at the official Russia in Canada government embassy account on Twitter, they're sharing information about this, saying that Canadian Parliament gives standing ovation to the Nazi SS butcher, yet another Trudeau regime insult in the memory of Canada's sons and daughters who fought Nazism in World War II. This is the literal Russia Embassy of Canada account. First of all, I thought everyone who's Russian left Canada, so why is the Russia embassy still tweeting? Second of all, what? Why is the Russian embassy in Canada now picking a fight with Trudeau, saying, hey, dude, that dude's a Nazi. Your prime minister is openly supporting a Nazi. What the hell is happening? Somebody in the comments, please try to make me feel a little bit more sane, because I'm starting to feel like I've gone off of the deep end, especially when I see photos like this at Contrast and Compare. Josh Alexander, who's part of the Save Canada team here in Canada, you might know him as the teenager who got evicted or suspended or expelled from school, whichever one it is, for saying that there's two genders, and it hit the news. He was on Tucker Carlson. He's been a very big advocate for protests and organizing protests here in Canada since then. Says one of these veterans is a Nazi who fought against the Allies. The other is a Canadian hero from the Airborne Regiment who was just beaten up and thrown in jail for peacefully protesting SOGI curriculum, which is sexual orientation and gender ideology that's being taught to minors here in Canada in our schools. The Canadian Parliament just applauded one of these veterans. Which one do you think it was? This is the Canadian Airborne Regiment who was just beaten up, a Canadian hero who was just beaten up and thrown in jail. I've seen the footage, and I think I even showed some of that footage of him being arrested in a previous video. He was peacefully protesting. Look at him. He's brittle. He's old. Total badass, but he's old. What could he possibly be doing? How could he be a possible threat to police? And then you got this guy who was a freaking Nazi who was invited into Parliament and applauded by our Canadian politicians. This feels like we're in some weird ass metaverse where opposite is good and like evil is good and good is evil. Because if you're feeling crazy, you're not the only ones. You're not the only one, let me tell you. Then you have Sija on Twitter saying it's the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs saying we are deeply troubled and disturbed that Ukrainian veteran of the infamous 14th Division of the Nazi SS, which actively participated in the genocide of Jews, was celebrated with a standing ovation in Canadian Parliament. Canada's Jewish community stands firmly with Ukraine in its war against Russian aggression, but we can't stay silent when crimes committed by Ukrainians during the Holocaust were whitewashed. And then you have these actual headlines that Chrystia Freeland's granddad was indeed a Nazi collaborator, so much for Russian disinformation. Like, it just, when you think it gets worse, or it can't get worse, it gets worse. But don't worry, because then we have this tweet here saying, breaking, Canada's Speaker of the House will issue a statement today concerning the embracing blunder of inviting a former member of the Ukrainian military division connected to the Nazi Party where Zelensky and Trudeau, they applauded him on Friday. Jewish groups want an apology. Stay tuned. So it's okay for the government of Canada and all of the federally elected members of parliament, which they may not have known offhand, but you would think that like they would be briefed on this, that this would be something that they would at least research some of the invited guests. Like, I don't know. This is a catastrophic failure from the federal government of Canada. And it doesn't just end with Justin Trudeau. All federal members of parliament applauded this guy. The House Speaker introduced him as a literal hero. What the F? WTF in caps? What is happening to Canada? And I feel like I'm having a bit of a mental crisis breakdown here on camera. And if it appears that way, it's because I think I am. I watch this shit every day. I'm the House of Commons guy. I live stream it every single day that they're sitting in Parliament on my second channel, House of Canada. You can find a link for that down in the description. And I'm so appalled by this. I'm so appalled that this person wasn't vetted, that he was embraced with open arms, and that Canada really feels like the Empire in Star Wars. It really does. They're trying to masquerade themselves as the good guys when we just see repetitively that we are the bad guys, not the citizens of Canada. We're held hostage here by our government, and likely America feels similar, if not the exact same way. Our government is so corrupt, and they have all of their priorities in the wrong order that I just don't know how they're going to get themselves out of the situation. You have Jewish members of parliament on the conservative bench that has been literally accused of being Nazis by our prime minister last year in 2022. And now they literally invite a Nazi, and the Jewish member is applauding. Okay, time to if you now are aware of this, Jewish member Melissa Lantzman, I think you should make a statement saying, what the F was he doing here? I didn't know who he was. At least announce it. Pierre Poilievre, time for you to maybe step up to the plate and say, this is a little bit messed up. And Justin Trudeau, no apology is going to get you out of this. And Freeland, we know your granddad was or whatever tied to the Nazis. I just don't see how Canada can be taken seriously by its people or internationally. This is a really weird state, guys, and I don't know how to end this video on a positive note with some inspirational speech or monologue because Canada's just fucked up. So let's just end it there.